Fullmetal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist.
Hello chaps and chapasses, and welcome back to A and B Revealed. Today we're going to talk about the prosthetic limbs known as Automail found within the world of Fullmetal Alchemist. In addition to the Automail found within the world of Fullmetal, I think what we'll be talking about today also applies to another one of my favorite series, and that's Violet Evergarden. These two series have their protagonists lose various limbs and have them replaced with what appears to be mechanical limbs, not really cybernetics like we see in sci-fi and whatnot, but more like a steampunk design. Also, if you're afraid if I spoiled something within the two series, don't worry. Both protagonists lose their limbs within the very first episode, so it's not really that much of a spoiler. Alright, so without further ado, let us delve into the science of prosthetic limbs. So, prosthetic limbs come in a variety of different forms. I won't break them all down, but some of the primary ones would be body-powered, otherwise known as mechanical, and myoelectric prosthetics. I'm choosing to focus on these two types of prosthetics because from what we see and hear about Ed and Violet's limbs, I believe them to be a combination of both these types of prosthetics. Before we can delve into what these types of prosthetics are like, let's go through a crash course on how the human body is capable of movement to begin with, just so we understand what these limbs are trying to replace. Movement can be broken down to three main components. I know it's a lot more complicated, but for the sake of brevity, let's just say three main components, and that would be the anchor, the pulley, and the signal. The anchor is the point on which the pulley pulls, hence the name, which in this case would be your bone. The pulley would be your muscles. They anchor themselves to one point on a bone, and then they pull on their second attachment point further down on the body. The anchor point is known as a muscle's origin, while their movement attachment point is known as their insertion. If we look at the example here, the muscle crosses over a joint in order to act upon that part of the body. So before the joint would be the anchor, while after the joint would be the movement. The directional terms in regards to this muscle would be known as proximal and distal, proximal being closer to the torso, while distal being further away. So the pattern we often see is that a muscle's origin is typically more proximal, while its insertion is distal. This is not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good concept to keep in mind when studying muscles in the limbs. We covered the anchor, the pulley, and lastly the signal, which is, as you guessed it, supplied by the nervous system. Altogether, the brain sends an electrical signal down the nerves, which then stimulates the muscles to contract. This pulls on the insertion point of the muscle and causes movement. These are the very basic principles that a prosthetic limb needs to emulate in order to function on the level we see both Ed and Violet operate at with their prosthetic limbs. If we take a look at their prosthetic limbs, we can see the telltale signs of the basic proponents needed for this limbs to function properly. Taking a look at this scene here, we have Edward breaking his prosthetic for the umpteenth time. And honestly, it's a great picture. Thanks for being so reckless, Ed. We can see joints, wires, and cables. Each of these serve as anchors, pulleys, and signals respectively. Even on Violet, we can see some signs of the pulley system within her prosthetics. As such, this would lean more towards the idea that their prosthetics operate under the body-powered prosthetic principle. These types of prosthetics operate by attaching themselves to the leftover muscles through a series of harnesses and cables. They then move by acting as an extension of the muscles they are attached to. However, due to the fantastical nature of Fullmetal Alchemist and Violet Evergarden, these limbs operate far beyond the regular ability of body-powered prosthetics. As such, this leads me to believe that their limbs may have the basic mechanical setup of the body-powered prosthetic, but have the internal wiring of the myoelectric prosthetics. Myoelectric prosthetics operate by conducting the electrical signal of the host's nervous system into the structure of the prosthetic, causing it to emulate actual muscle movement. Hence the name myoelectric. Myo meaning muscle and electric meaning, electrical. My main concern with applying the myoelectrical limb concept to Ed and Violet is that it is at a level of technological understanding far beyond what we witness within each of their worlds. Myoelectrical prosthetics operate utilizing batteries in order to amplify the signal sent by the nervous system to the mechanical parts of the limb. An AI is used when it is taught to interpret the signals sent from the nervous system and mimics the movement in the prosthetic's limb. Obviously, AI and electrical batteries are a level of technology beyond the settings of Fullmetal Alchemist and Violet Evergarden, but the precision and functionality of their limbs is far beyond any we see except in the most advanced prosthetics in our world. So what exactly is happening? This level and functionality can be explained in the world of Fullmetal, and that is of course through alchemy. Alchemy can be used to break down and reconstruct elements into a variety of complex shapes and figures. What I hypothesize happens is something similar to Roy's flame alchemy. That is to say, one alchemist that thoroughly understands human biology used alchemy to make mechanical parts that would emulate human muscles and nerves to a much higher fidelity than anything that could be produced by regular engineering. This would explain why we have the scene about connecting nerves in Edward's Automail. Winry and Pinocchio are connecting Ed's nerves to the synthetic nerves produced by alchemy within his Automail. Synthetic nerves that would continue to conduct the signal from the brain to the limbs. I won't get into the specific biology about how nerves operate. If you are curious, I do have a couple of videos, my Attack on Titan and Code Geass videos that talk about that. So feel free to check those out. Shameless plug, finished. This would allow the prosthetic to operate at a much higher level, especially if the mechanical muscles were made using alchemy as well. This process would only require the manufacturer to be an alchemist, while all the mechanists would only have to understand Automail. Additionally, this would explain why many individuals have private mechanists. Their mechanists would design the parts needed for their operations prosthetic to operate at full efficiency, and any part they couldn't make themselves, they would send the blueprint they designed to an Automail alchemist to create, their version of custom orders. And I just realized something. Is it an Automail mechanic or mechanist, like a specialist in mechanics? Because I know like when you take your car and you see the mechanic, so is it the same thing? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been saying mechanist this entire video. Now back to my point about alchemy being used to make the Automail parts. I know I'm just spitballing here, but it makes sense to me. The high level of prosthetic quality is explained by how detailed alchemy can be, especially since it recreates scenes at the atomic level. Now the problem that's left is the fact that Violet's world does not have alchemy. So my only guess there is that their engineers are capable of replicating prosthetic limbs at the high level of fidelity that alchemists can, simply without alchemy. So to summarize, Automail is precisely created via alchemy and implemented by personal mechanics. The Automail is then connected to the nervous system of the patient so the signals from the brain can be conducted down the length of the prosthetic limb to the muscles of that limb. The prosthetics operate on a Polian harness system that allows it to hook up directly to the muscles and bones of the host to act as an extension of the body, essentially replacing the lost limb. The high level of dexterity of the limbs can be explained by the precision of the engineers and alchemists that create these limbs. They're using their advanced abilities to make mechanical parts that emulate the human body to near perfection. So what do you all think? I know there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to prosthetics, but I'd like to keep my discussion at a level where most people can understand and engage with. Also, it feels like cheating to explain things away with a magic system. And again, looking back at my other videos, I guess I kind of did the same for each of those too. Let me know if you have any additional ideas or critiques. I'd love to hear from each of you. One last thing though, I did hear that alchemic circles were placed in Ed's limbs in order to enhance it and its abilities, but that doesn't really make much sense to me, since we never see alchemy used on his limb outside of him turning it into a blade, which is why I didn't really talk about it. So if you know more about it, let me know how alchemy is used to enhance Ed's limbs other than just making the parts themselves. Well then, now to check and see if breathing will really help me fight my demons. Take care everybody, and God bless.